Hey everybody, welcome back to Absolutely Marvel and DC. I'm Dylan, that is Sal, and it's just us today, talking about a Marvel movie, which might be telling.
Indeed.
Yeah, we're talking about Eternals today, which I've gotten. I haven't really looked into it because, I don't care about this movie. But
sure.
From what I've gathered, I put out a tweet that reads harsher than I meant it to. But I put out a tweet that was basically saying that this movie made me the opposite of excited for the future of the MCU, which I'll delve deeper into in this. But the replies I got to that tweet and
Were
some
mixed.
like the Rotten Tomatoes score, like there's a bunch of things where it's just it's very mixed. So I don't know what you thought of this movie. So let's go into what
Interesting,
you thought.
yeah. Well, I saw it a few weeks ago, and it was optimal conditions. You know, lots of screenings, lots of precautions, stadium seating, IMAX theater, nice experience. And I went into this movie. I don't like the Eternals. I think they're boring. I don't care for them. I think that they're like a Jack Kirby indulgence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's something that like he created that he was like, I'm just kind of really enamored with the idea of like humans being created by space gods, by aliens. And I don't think he actually even believed it. He was just like, I just kind of like that idea and I want to jump into it. And, you know, a lot of people have been saying that Eternals, even during Kirby's time, they were like, I don't like this. It doesn't belong. And it does. Like, right? Like he created it after he left Marvel, went to DC, created the New Gods, and then came back.
Right.
And was like, here's more shit I was gonna do over here with the New Gods, but I guess I'll do it here with Marvel. And Marvel fans were like, I like regular people who are bitten by radioactive whatevers and like have problems with human beings, like the space gods thing, and they can't die, and deviants and the origin of the universe. Like it's for the birds, and I'm one of those people. I was like, no. I loved this movie. I thought it was excellent.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was a really like clear direction from a very deliberate creator. You know, in an ocean of sameness. Every critic of the MCU is like, the first thing they say is they feel like they're all the same. Let's take them, right? The criticisms of the MCU lately, particularly the phases like 2 through 4. Bad CGI fights at the end that have nothing to do with the director. No clear, real direction or a kind of hegemony, right? There's kind of like sameness to them. And the characters are all very like jokey and similar. Like every protagonist is the same, and their villains are just another version of themselves. I don't really see that in this movie.
Yeah, and I think so. That's very interesting that's the thing that you're praising it for, because that is the one thing that I noticed in this movie that like throughout while I was watching I was like, at least it's different. And
yeah, and I want to say that I'm not a contrarian. I don't like things because they're different. You know, I like pop music. I dig Spider-Man and Batman as my favorite superheroes. Like, I am not the kind of person who's like, oh, it's different. That means it's the best thing ever. Like, I'm not that person. And I did not like Eternals because it's different. I liked Eternals because I enjoyed it, because I thought it was cool. I really dug the direction. I liked the effects. I enjoyed, like, every aspect of it I enjoyed. I liked the story. I liked the characters. I liked the direction. The CG was top-notch. The fight scenes looked like they were directed by the director of the movie. You know, like, you go from story to acting to direction to effects. I think it was all a slam dunk.
interesting. I disagree.
I know.
It's another Batman v Superman situation.
It is.
It's like, it is a movie that I think rides the line of being good and being bad. Like, I don't think it's bad. I don't dislike this movie.
Right, because I don't think it rides a line of being good or bad. I think it's just like, it's a matter of whether you like it or not. I think it's like Blade Runner, where it's like people either like it or they don't, and it's like it's because of the deliberateness of the movie. Like, I think of Blade Runner only because of the opening of like the text, where I was like, oh my God, like you've just lost 2/3 of the audience right now with just text on the screen. You could have cast any actor, Morgan Freeman, Stanley Tucci, anybody to do a voiceover. and read that crap to the audience, but they didn't. Instead, they did a left-justified 9-paragraph essay explaining the Eternals, and I was like, wow. And it reminded me of the opening of Terminator and Blade Runner and like all these different like classic old sci-fi heady movies that were just kind of like unapologetically deliberate. Like, I'm making this movie and, you know, it's probably not going to make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm a child of those kind of movies from the 80s where it's like, I'm making a movie and I don't know why they gave us all this money, but here it is.
Yeah. And I think like that opening crawl kind of set the tone for the whole movie.
Set a tone,
for me,
right? Yeah.
It's very much like, it's weird because my main issues with the movie are the characters. And
Okay.
I like them and I like the talent behind them, but I
Right.
feel like in a lot of aspects in this movie they didn't go far enough with a lot of stuff. One of which being like the characterization of these characters changes drastically throughout the movie. Like at the beginning, with the silent crawl, they force you to read something, puts you out of your comfort zone, and then they start the movie. They don't really say anything. It's
Nope.
weird, and like, you know, the direction to me was very much like, okay, we're not supposed to like these characters. They're not supposed to be likable. They're supposed to be gods, and we're supposed to feel weird about them. But over the course of the movie, it's almost like either, you know, something happened over the course of the movie where it's like, no, this is a Marvel movie, so they have to be likable. But at the same time, you've already set up that they're like incredibly powerful and are doing things that, you know, there's also there's no vessel for, I mean, there's obviously comic relief, but there's no vessel for a character to lighten what is happening in the movie with these characters. In the
beginning or throughout the whole movie?
Throughout the whole movie. Because, I mean, there is some level of that, like, what's his name? Kumail Nanjiani's, like, assistant guy with the camera. He fills that role pretty well.
Yes,
but
Harish Patel.
Yeah, he's gone at a certain point, and also like there's one scene that I really, really liked where he says to the Eternals before he leaves, he's like, "Thank you for everything you did for humanity." I loved that, and I wanted more of that because it's something that, like, you know, this is a huge idea that they're just throwing in the middle of this universe.
Yes,
and a lot of where the movie fails for me is them not. Them explaining too much in corners that don't need it, and not focusing on the stuff that I think was working. Like, as uncomfortable. What worked for me was, you know, I liked in the beginning when I was feeling uncomfortable about these characters, like the protagonists of the movie, me feeling like I don't trust them and I don't like them, I enjoyed. And that is kind of the point where like everyone kind of has secrets. And, you know, not everything is as it seems, but they just kind of like trip into that stuff. Like, there's 2 midpoints in this movie, which I found very strange.
Okay.
And that's sort of like, I don't know, it is a larger, I don't know the word I'm looking for here, but like the movie having 2 midpoints is
was an issue
weird.
For you. Can you identify them since we can spoil the movie?
Oh yeah, true. That's a good point. So the first one happens, I think, about midway through the movie, which is where it doesn't have to be where a midpoint happens, but when Arishem reveals that the emergence is the real point of this movie, it's like, okay, there's your midpoint, big exposition dump. Too much exposition, but we you know, the point of the movie has changed irreversibly from that point forward. Right. And then about like half an hour later, Icarus reveals that he killed Ajax and knew about this all along and blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, you just did the same thing twice.
Do you feel that's the same thing? Because I feel like the reveal of the Eternals' true purpose and their origins, and then Icarus's turn, or rather, never turning. I don't know if that's a midpoint so much as that's just a reveal. Like I really loved that moment, and I know that a lot of people got really upset about it, and I was like really, you were late with Icarus, like at any point. In the comics, like he's not relatable in the comics at all. Like he's no one's favorite superhero, and yet, cue the guy in the comments that like professionally disagrees with me, who's gonna be like, oh, actually, Icarus is my favorite character, and he's so relatable, you know. And it's like, yeah, because he dogmatically follows orders, and he's immobile when it comes to like the changing of the winds and the like just the moral implications of his actions. Like, yeah, no, that's Icarus. Icarus does not change. That's what he does. It's who he is. It makes him unrelatable to people like us who dig characters that like are capable of growth and change. But with Icarus, like he's not. Like he's just like I'm built to do this. And in essence all the Eternals are. Like they're all built to do this, but and while it's not necessarily clear, although I think if you get deeper into it, like you could probably identify what each of them is supposed to do. It's not really clear what each of them is supposed to do. But like, who are we to question the divine plan of a big space rock man, who is just using Earth as an egg? But I have no issue with the Icarus thing. I was just like, I love that moment. I was like, wow, because it made me upset. Like I was like, what the hell? Like we're all on board. And then to go even further, where like Icarus is immobile. He's like, no, like that's the plan. And also, I knew about it the whole time. And also this, and this. And like, what's funny is like, if you dig into the Eternals, like they can't die. Like when they die, you throw them into the machine and they come back out,
right,
and they're fine. In this, they're like, no, they can. Because almost in every Marvel movie, I'm like, oh, that person's not going to die. Or that person's going to come back. And then they don't. And I'm like, ah. But in this, I kind of dug it, where like death is permanent, where they're like, I
missed that. Why can they die? Because I came out of the movie confused as to why they why death was a problem.
I think they're going to reveal, because here's the thing, they don't know that they can come back. Like I think they're going to reveal,
I thought they did.
No. They
at least die. Cersei does, because Arishem told her.
They know they can. They know they're going to be reborn, or they're going to be brought back, but without their memories. So they might as well be dead. Like if they don't know who they are, or they don't like have the experiences that they've had, then they might as well be new people. In that regard, like it's why they preserve Angelina Jolie's character. So it's why it was such a moral issue for them, for Thena, because they're like, if we erase her memory, she won't be who she is.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter if like we fix her body and put her on another planet and make her do the same shit she was going to do before. She's still not going to be Thena anymore. And it's like that's a neat idea. It's a neat concept, and it's one that they didn't really over-explain that, which I kind of appreciate. And
also, she was great. That, I really liked her.
I think everybody was great. Jolie. Like one of those things. I was fascinated by like how good everybody was. Like
that's
just everybody doing a really good job.
I feel like, and I don't. This is probably a world that we shouldn't have, because it probably would be bad. But I would have preferred if like half of this cast got their own movies.
Oh sure, yeah. Yeah, I would not have wanted to see those movies.
Sure,
because we get enough of them. We get just enough.
I think that we don't get enough of like Thena and Kingo. Is that Kumail Nanjiani's character's name?
Yes, that's Kumail Nanjiani's character. Yes.
Yeah,
I think we get just enough of Kingo, because I remember them casting Nanjiani, and I was like, oh my god, like what a Marvel decision, right? We're gonna cast
I like him
this,
a lot.
Like,
that's probably why I
see. I don't. I find him like so unfunny and so charismatic.
There's the difference there.
But I loved him in this movie, and I was like fascinated by how good he was, like how not in his character that he presents publicly he was in the first half of the movie. And then we do the flip where it's like, and that's the change, right? Because like everyone would be like, oh, well, you must love him because it's a Marvel movie, and like, see, he's hilarious, and he's got his little sidekick, and he's a billionaire, and he's got all his money, and he's like cracking jokes, and like on one hand, yes, that's true, but for me, I was like, I love it because it's another like one of those telegraphing messages of the movie, which is that Earth changes you. But I'm one of those sci-fi fans that like loves finding out the importance of Earth. Like I'm very egocentric, obviously, and I like the idea of like Earth being the center of the universe. So I'm like, hey, we're special. and so like the idea of Earth changing us and like the Eternals breaking their sacred oath for the first time ever in aeons, only because of this planet that like kills itself and blows crap up and makes hulks and stuff. Like there's a greater purpose there that maybe even the gods like haven't overlooked. And like Nanjiani's switch, I was like, wow. And seeing the change in everybody, like seeing, and not everybody's, like we see Makari's change just because she is exposed to knowledge and information. She's on board for the new plan of saving humanity. Yet Sprite has direct connection with humanity, and because they were like dealt a short hand, no pun intended, they are more than willing to betray us or throw it or go with the plan, go with the original plan. But like Earth changes everybody, and then it's like when it doesn't change Icarus, it's like, oh wow, like damn, how heartbreaking. I don't know. That's one of the elements I was like, that's really cool.
Sure.
Way to do that and not say it. Just show it through the characters.
I think it just, there's a lot of stuff that, like we said at the top, like it's very much, this movie is very much what you like. If you like this kind of stuff, then you're probably going to enjoy it. But like the stuff that you said, talking about the Eternals in the comics, I think I'm in that camp of like, I've never cared about the Eternals. The biggest thing I know the Eternals for is the book that this movie's based on, and them dying at the beginning of Jason Aaron's Avengers run.
Yeah, so. Which like it's amazing how that didn't do anything. Like,
right.
I remember being so annoyed with Aaron for doing that because I was like, you're gonna make this franchise, and you're putting in the main book that they die. And then they don't, of course, because you got Kieran Gillen's book, which is way better. But anyway, even still, I couldn't care less. Like I'm like, I don't care about these guys. I don't care about these space gods and their hoity-toity purpose. That Neil Gaiman book, however, is really is great. And of course, if you go back, like Cersei is an Avenger. Like she's been around forever, and which is why it was like really easy to. I think it was maybe like easier for comic book fans to be like, oh right, Cersei, yeah, she loves humanity. I mean, like she sleeps with them, she like works with them. She's been an Avenger like since for longer than like Spider-Man and Wolverine have been Avengers. Like that's why it was funny when you mentioned earlier. You were like, we're not supposed to like or trust these characters. I mean, like you didn't buy Cersei in the beginning, where she's like working with humanity and trying to make them like try to teach them. Like you didn't feel that like that genuineness, that authenticity.
It was less that I didn't trust them in like that regard and what they were doing. Like I could tell, like obviously Cersei was the one that we were supposed to be like fully in trust of. But like the way that they shot that the first time they came to Earth, like that first mission, was very much like these are freaks, like these are aliens that we're not. And that was like it was shocking, coupled with that opening crawl, and I liked that. And then they flipped it, and I was like, oh, okay, so they're not doing that. But it was also like, for all of the characters in this movie, a lot of them I didn't end up liking as much as someone like Cersei.
Okay.
Cersei is like there are a couple standouts here that like Cersei is probably the one. If they just continue with her and they bring her into the larger MCU, that's fine.
Yeah,
I like her enough to do that. Yeah. But, I also really liked, what's his name? The guy who died, who was protecting Athena.
Gilgamesh?
Yeah, Gilgamesh. I loved him. Why'd they kill him? I mean, he could come back.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Is like, that's the... Yeah, because if you watch like the end and the post credits, like they'll bring him back. If they, well, here's the thing, they won't, because the movie has 53% freshness rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and like it's the biggest flop in MCU history or whatever. I don't know, but like, yeah. It's too bad, because I liked all of these characters. Like I liked Kingo, I liked Sprite, I liked like Phastos and Makari, and like I everyone did a really good job of like portraying who they were, how being on Earth for such a short amount of time changed them into someone else. I really liked Icarus. I thought like Richard Madden did such a good job with like that character, because I was like, I've seen enough evil Supermen to last me a lifetime. And I think this did something kind of like new, where they took the trappings of like the Superman archetype, not the character basis, just the power base, and go like, look at him go, see what he does. And I was like, wow. Like, by the way, I thought the Superman effect on him was fantastic. I was like, wow. It was like there was a little bit of, I think there was a little bit of like of pettiness in there. I feel like there were a couple moments in this movie where they were like, look at what we do with Justice League.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's definitely
did
like,
you see that shot where Thena like does the Wonder Woman pose and you're like, I see what you're doing.
the CG and like all of the action definitely, like, their powers look very clean in a way that's like
clean.
It's unapologetically just like, yeah, she goes fast. And like, yeah, he can fly. And it doesn't like it doesn't like shake the entire camera. It doesn't lightning doesn't go everywhere.
Speed was done so well.
Yeah.
And new, like different. They didn't do either Quicksilver. They didn't do the Flash. You know, they did something different. And yet palatable and quick to understand. I was like, wow. Like, cool. Maybe they should have the director of the movie direct the action every time.
Fair. There's something that another like big, larger issue with the script of this movie that I'm curious to get your perspective on. I hate when movies, just any fiction, pause entirely to do exposition and go back. And Marvel's been doing that a lot lately. They did it kind of in Shang-Chi. I forgive it because it was utilized better in that. They did it in the climax of Black Widow, and they do it basically the entirety of this movie. To the point where, like, halfway through, I was like, they should have just front-loaded all of this. Just cut this down into, like, 15 to 20 minutes, put all of the background stuff at the front of the movie, and then do an Endgame-style cut to 500 years later. I think that would have been better. But did that bother you at all?
No. I really, like, I didn't feel the runtime on this movie at all, which I was like really surprised by. It's funny because it didn't feel like a Marvel movie, but it did feel still engaging, and like it just felt like we were seeing like a new movie, you know, like just a new thing that they were trying, and yet it still worked in the Marvel format. And I was kind of like, I was hopeful for the future as a result of this movie, because I was like, wow, they can make like deliberate, creator-led, original, non-formulaic feeling Marvel movies, and it'll still feel like it's part of the universe, like all the comic books do. You know, like Spider-Man does not feel like a Blade book, etc. If you know, whenever Blade gets a book, but you know what I mean. And it's like, I was kind of hoping for more of that. I feel like Hollywood learns the wrong lesson every time, especially when they lose money because they can't think of anything else. And so I can imagine them being like, just everything that happened in this movie, we're not doing. Like, we're not doing that. They want terrible Black Panther fights at the end. They want like a short, like Ant-Man-esque running time, and they want like a character who is like the first internet's pick of the actor, and just hilarious quips. Just have Patton Oswalt come in and punch up every dialogue line of his. And
I will say, like, that I will fully agree that is a shame, because this movie does have like it is different, and it does evoke that, like, you know, that comic book sense of like, this is a different comic book. It just might not be for you, and that's fine.
Right.
And the problem is, like, yeah, they're gonna learn that like everything in this movie is a no-go, which is
right,
especially because there's so much diversity and representation in this movie, to a point where I was like, did they just put everything in this
You know
movie?
what's funny about that? That's another one of those things where I was like, oh my God. Like, I felt like people were going to be annoyed by it. And I didn't even really, like, not that I didn't notice, but it was more like it didn't feel, that didn't feel like it was an agenda. You know?
Yeah.
It felt like it was just like, we're just going to, if you can, we will, you know? Like, there's no reason for Makari to be deaf or mute or whatever, you know, she was.
I think she's mute.
Okay, there you go. I think she's also deaf, but I don't know. In any case.
It seemed like she could hear people.
There you go.
Is why I say that. Because not everyone was talking to her with sign language.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But she is a space god, so who knows? But but I was like, yeah. Like, it didn't change anything, and in fact, it only like made scenes more interesting. Like, I don't know. I find sign language beautiful, and it's interesting to see, and it's really cool to like see it displayed in a movie, and you know, just a lot of that. Where I was like, wow, like, way to go, you know? Like, I felt bad for Kit Harington, because like he didn't need to be in this movie, and I felt like they were kind of like, yeah, and this. Like, he felt more tacked on, but not in a way where I was like, and you need to cut him out. You know, like where it's like totally like I liked him in the movie. I just kind of felt like the straight white guy in the movie was the only one that I was like, you didn't really need to be in this movie.
Now, this we'll get back to this later. You saw this movie a few weeks ago. Did you have mid and post credits?
Yes, we got all the mid post credit scenes.
We'll talk about that in a little bit then.
We need to. Maybe that needs to be its own video.
Yeah, we could talk about those for a while. So yeah, another thing about the diversity that like the only thing I noticed that was like it took me out of the movie a little bit.
Sure.
But you know, again, it's just we do reviews like this and we think about this stuff from, you know, different angles. Is like every time there was something that was representation that I normally hadn't seen, I was like, well, okay, interesting that Disney is like really pivoting towards this direction. And then like the representation I care about, obviously I'm white, like I'm not going to get any joy out of seeing that aside from like, cool. But you know, I'm also genderqueer and bi. So like, that's the stuff that I'm interested in. And I was like, well, Disney will never do anything like that.
You mean like an on-screen male kiss in a superhero movie?
And that's what I was like, oh, Faustus is gay. That's cool. They'll never show them kiss. And then they did. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But you know what's fun? Well, it was a good moment, and I saw it in the middle of Manhattan, so like there were no shocks in the theater.
Yeah.
But it was also conveniently in a scene that you could easily cut for the Chinese audiences.
Yeah, and that was it was very quick. And
but you know what? I really kind of liked it, and you know, coming from a cis white male myself, I feel overly qualified to talk about gays being presented in the industry, but I don't know. I felt like it was really cool. Like, I thought I didn't think about it in terms of its representative like nature or its like impact. I was in the movie, so I was just like, right on. Like that's what you would do. It would be weirder if they didn't. Yeah. If he's saying goodbye and they're not sure if it's going to be forever. And yet, like afterward, but I was in the movie, right? And then afterwards, thinking about it, I remember hearing people talk about it, and I was like, oh yeah, like I guess that's a good point. Like, it didn't feel tacked on. It didn't feel like it was being shoved in anybody's faces. It didn't feel like they were lingering on it too long, or I didn't feel like they were really cutting it down. Like, it didn't feel to me like it was just like, don't put, like producers in the room, like editing it down to be like, it must be like 0.48 seconds long.
3 frames long.
Yeah, it must be 3 frames. No, I fought for 4. Yeah, I didn't see that. I was just like, that's really cool. But I did notice now, like weeks later, and us talking about it, I'm like, you could easily cut that out for Chinese audiences or for whatever audiences happen to find that objectionable.
Yeah.
Like,
and like, the only thing that I noticed about it, like in terms of criticism, which like,
right.
You got to be careful about criticizing this stuff because Disney will be like, oh, you don't like it? We won't ever do it then.
Well, or they're like, well, how then you must hate gays. And I'm like, oh my God.
But like, as someone who has watched many a movie where a heterosexual couple have very passionately made out on screen for a long time.
There's a sex scene in this. There's a straight sex scene in this movie, which, by the way, first one in a Marvel movie outside of like Tony Stark, maybe. There was that scene.
Like fade to black, go away, like.
Yeah.
Cersei and Icarus were naked on screen pretty much.
We're like banging on the beach. And it's like, and that got more reaction. The audience was like, whoa. I'm like, yeah.
A hush falls over the crowd.
Like, oh.
But yeah, the only thing I noticed is like their kiss did seem very impassionate, and that could be any number of things. Both of them aren't gay. Yeah, like that's what I was. It was like it's possible like these two dudes have never had to kiss another dude before.
Right.
Like it's but like that's.
I think that kiss has more passion than Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver at the end of Ghostbusters.
Fair enough. But you watch something like Call Me by Your Name, and then you watch this, and it's like, oh. That was acting. Those were the actors kissing, not the characters.
Yes. No, that's fair. All right, I'll take it. I will say I was not pulled out of it at all. But
sure. And again, that's difference in perspective. I feel like,
exactly.
Some people just wouldn't care. They'd look away at that point. Maybe
if you
gasp.
need to, yes. Yeah, clutch your pearls,
Clutch their pearls.
And look away. But yeah, no, I mean, like, I don't have much more to say outside of just like I dug it, and it's like I don't like the like there's no formula for your reaction to art, right? And that's like the thing that I want people to take away from this, where it's like not in defense of me, but more in defense of you, because like, and not you specifically, I mean like you out there watching, because like I feel that because I feel that the public discourse is a really effective means of manipulating the like opinions of the masses. And while we don't really have that kind of pull, I hope that our voice can be a voice of dissent among a cacophony of like, you know, the same thing from everybody, or from people who are professionally outraged and looking for an excuse to be mad. Because there's people who have like an agenda of being like, yes, the beast has fallen, Marvel has taken a hit. And there's some people who are like, I hate the Eternals and everything in them, and I hope that they fail. Like literally, you know, when they made the Inhumans movie announcement, I was like, pass. Like, I'm just not, that's one more movie Marvel is making, I'm not going to watch. And then they didn't make it, and they made it a show, and I didn't watch that, and it was horrible.
Yep.
But it didn't hurt that it was like terrible, like on every conceivable level. But you know, it was also made by a guy who makes bad art. So like, you know, what do you want from me? And in any case, I feel like this is a movie where it's like, think about it. Like, think about it, or don't. But like, throw away like the noise before you see this movie or after you think about this movie. Like, if you've seen this movie and you're like, I hated it, like, throw away the noise for a minute and think to yourself, like, did I really hate it, or was I like kind of just like influenced by it? Because I've seen so many movies where like I've seen people see beloved classics from like 50 years ago and being like, that was overrated, and being like, do you feel that way because it was rated so highly in the public discourse forever, or did you like, you know, it's just
context is very important.
I think so. And I think like seeing Eternals in a contextless environment was really awesome.
Yeah, which is like, that is very interesting, because I, you know, as someone who doesn't...
You saw it like what, the other day, right?
I saw it Thursday as soon as I could.
Yeah.
And like, I don't watch trailers. I heard the trailer for this twice, because again, I close my eyes and plug my ears.
You do these, yeah.
Yeah. But the only thing I saw is I accidentally saw the Rotten Tomatoes score on Twitter before watching this. And
that might be enough
like,
sometimes.
That's what I was gonna say. Is like that is something that like, I am human. Like I cannot go into this movie not having seen that after I've seen that.
Right.
And you know, I try to like do things to make my opinion as like pure as possible.
Yeah.
Which is why I see these movies by myself. So like, nobody around me can like yell during the movie and like ruin my experience, which could sour my opinion on the movie, which is not fair. And you know, I try to see it as early as possible so I don't get spoiled, blah blah blah. But like, if in a case like that, after I leave a movie, if I'm thinking one way about it, like if I like a movie, if I say like, I enjoyed that, this is why I write notes after I see a movie. It's like, I want to have a fully formed opinion where I can point to specific things about it that I liked or that I disliked. And with this movie, I have like 2 bullet points, because I didn't specifically love anything really, and I didn't specifically hate anything. It's just middle of the road for me.
That's fair. Well, and when I saw it, you know, all I could do was talk about superficiality, because I was under a like binding gag order to not talk about it in spoiler territory. So I didn't want to say like, it's awesome and you should go see it, because like, also I got to see it, you know, in a screening, and I didn't want to seem like I was like biased or part of the Disney narrative, and I wasn't. I don't care. Like, you know, if I didn't like it, I will say I don't like it. Trust me. But when it came to this, I did talk about like how it's gorgeous looking and it's well shot and it has like a real like direction of photography, and the CG was almost flawless until the post-credit scenes, and I was like, wow. and just so that kind of struck me. That was the biggest thing that struck me. And I know people are like, oh, look at him talking about the effects because he can't talk about the story. And I'm like, it's a science fiction movie. Like, I don't love 1984 because of the story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's about how it makes you feel. And when it comes to sci-fi, which I think Eternals kind of is, like, I don't consider it like Dune. What's interesting is whenever I said like, hey, I liked Eternals, people are like, did you see Dune? And I'm like, what the hell does one have to do with the other? Like, well, they're both like wide-angled science fiction movies that came out from two competing studios. That's why. And it's like, well, that's apples and oranges, dude. But I don't know. I was just like, because it was this kind of like thing that is epic in scope and trying to tell you a story, but also trying to say something about the human condition. I was like, I just let myself feel it. And I was like, I liked how I felt at the end of it. I liked how I felt during the movie, and I just enjoyed the experience. You know, will I watch it 17 times? Probably not. But like, I haven't seen Dune 17 times either, you know?
That's fair. I've seen Iron Man 3 17 times though, so
I've seen I've seen Iron Man 1 or 2 17 times. Like, I like Iron Man 2, which may discredit me entirely.
Same.
But you know, because I don't like Iron Man 3. I like it enough. I like everyone in it, and I like watching them have fun doing it. But I'm like, whatever. But yeah. There's some MCU movies I'm not a fan of, and
sure,
this is not one of them. Like, I did enjoy this, and I was like, I really here's the other thing that I liked about it, because like it was so specific, is that it also ended up being a thing just like the Eternals, where it is so inoffensive, I think, in its like, you know, it is about the world ending, which I know that like every internet columnist is like, like what stakes that I, you know, but at the end, I will honestly be like, wow, I like, there's tension in this sequence where they're going to destroy the Earth. You know, it isn't like the core where I'm like, oh, I guess they're probably not going to destroy the Earth at the end of this movie. But it can still be over there. You know, like people can go see No Way Home, and it has no, and they're not like, how come they're not pointing to the marble eternal coming out of the ocean? How come they're not talking about how fast Makari is? Nope.
They purposefully decided to move the emergence from San Francisco to the middle of the ocean. Fine.
I like that because it is able to be self-contained.
It makes more sense.
It's over there. It's like, you know, if you didn't like it, or if you don't care about it, then it's okay for it to still exist because it doesn't do anything, change anything. And it does introduce some new characters into the MCU, none of whom are technically members of this team. They're all in the post-credits.
Yeah, which we'll get to, which is the point that, like, watch that video. But that's where it sort of leaves its mark on the MCU in ways that may or may not
a Marvel
have
movie.
A future effect. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is
like those
another
are the
thing
most
that they've been
like a
doing
Marvel
recently.
thing. Yeah. I'm fine with that too. I like those. And two impactful post-credit scenes, by the way. Two scenes that did things where I'm like, oh. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, this movie, I don't know when it's coming to Disney Plus, but probably soon. Do you say people should wait for that, or?
Here's the thing. I would normally say you should go to the theater and see it because I think that the scope really helped. Like, seeing it on an IMAX screen, seeing it on any big screen, will have the desired effect of the grand in scale, the epicness. It's not Star Wars, where you got to see it in the theater because it's an experience. And I mean like real Star Wars, not like any Star Wars made in the last 30 years. But like, Eternals is one of those things where don't risk anything going to the theater to see Eternals. You know, like, if you are in the city and you have like all these restrictions and all these like weird, because the thing is, you know, we're still living in this time and it sucks and I hate it and it's stupid and I don't want to wear masks and I don't want to get boosters, but I do because I care. And you know, if you want to see Eternals, you know, make sure you take all the precautions necessary. But like, at the end of the day, Eternals is a movie that was meant to be seen on screen. It probably will never be again. So, you know what? You know, just use your own best judgment when it comes to that. I would say in another time, definitely see it in theaters. Today, I'd be like, there's no movie that's worth getting sick over, whether it's COVID or a cold. It really isn't. Like, there's no movie worth getting sick over. But this is a movie that I'm glad I saw it in theaters.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
You should catch it.
I think. Yeah,
right?
if, you know.
Would you? I'll bet you would have hated it if you saw it on a friggin' TV or your phone.
Yeah, your phone. No, don't watch movies like this on your phone, unless that's all you have, I guess.
I will admit, I did watch a lot of What If, like, because we would watch when we did our What If reviews.
Sure.
We'd do them in the morning, like when they aired. So I just wake up and go, all right, what if? Let's see what we're doing today. And it was just as good as watching it on any other screen.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's What If. That's made for,
That thing, it's
streaming
made for consumption.
content. That's different.
It's gummy bears. It's candy. It's garbage. Just eat it.
Anyway, I think we've talked long enough about Eternals, so
Yeah.
stay tuned to the channel for we're gonna talk about the post credits and mid credits next. I don't know if this is coming out before or after. I'm not the one who releases them, but who knows? If that's already out, go watch it. If it's not, then wait a couple days, you impatient viewer.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, this has been Absolutely Marvel in DC. I'm Dylan. That is Sal. See y'all next time.